Right. So this video is about finding your productivity system if you're someone busy, student, employee, entrepreneur like me. And what I'm going to talk about is a few things. First of all, how do you choose a system? And then what is my system and how do I use it basically? So the first question is how do you choose a system? And if you're watching this video, you might be like, oh, I'm using Todoist or Things or whatever to manage my tasks and I just want to change for whatever reason. And there's a huge chasm of despair and depression from trying out new tools and trying different things and never being quite satisfied. And I want to set you a mindset really quickly, and that is that nothing's perfect. In fact, nothing's even excellent. Most things are just okay. And so, what I'm going to talk about is how you can choose a different system. So I just want to show you what I was using before is I had Todoist. Okay, so I'll pull that up and we'll be able to see some of my tasks here. Oh dear. And some of my projects that are kind of laid out as projects, as we can see. And what I had is I had Todoist to manage all kind of my like regular, personal projects and tasks and things like that. And then I had Notion to manage projects with like note taking. And so typically your system is going to involve some sort of calendar if you take meetings or if you need to schedule your life, some sort of to-do list, and then some sort of like documents, potentially like project management, things like that. And you also want to have somewhere to take quick notes. So what I did, oh no, my light died. Okay, so what I did is I basically wrote down why I didn't like the system that I had. And so here in my Notion, which I'll talk about in a second, I actually wrote down what I didn't like and why I was switching, because I realized this is a project. I'll talk about this more, but this is in my projects database. And I was like, why does this matter? Why is this a priority right now? And I basically wrote down all the things that I do like, that I don't want to lose, because oftentimes if you see a cool tool with some cool functionality, you might try out that tool. You might like it a bit, but then you'll realize it's missing something from your old system, and you switch back, and boom, you've already wasted 2 or 3 hours. And so I wrote down what I do like, what I want to keep, and then what I do not like, and what I wanted to change. And so I found the main thing was that it was completely redundant to copy tasks over from Notion to Todoist, okay? I also thought it would be cool to have some sort of progress indicator like there is in Things. And then the rigidity of my Notion setup was a little bit too kind of rigid, and it just made it like a little bit harder to add tasks and to work than I wanted it to. Oftentimes I find that the best productivity systems, a lot of the most productive people don't even use something like this, and probably more than that, like a lot of productive people just use like a note and a paper and pen to write down the tasks they want to do. And ultimately, the people who have like the super sophisticated second brains with all these plugins and everything going on, they have the least going on. They are actually the biggest losers. And so I think kind of having a lack of structure and rigidity actually makes a big difference. And so what I did is I kind of assessed some different solutions. So I was like, I could use Notion plus a to-do app, Notion in itself, blah, blah, blah. And what I figured out, and I wrote this down, is my end decision, okay? Because oftentimes when we make decisions, we just kind of make them, and then in the future we tend to reverse those decisions without really thinking about why we made them in the first place. It's one of those kind of weird things that we do without really thinking about it. And what I decided is whenever I make a decision like this, especially because this used to be a problem for me, is switching kind of task management all the time, is I was like, all right, I'm going to write this down, and the next time I go to make a decision, I have to do the same thing. I have to pull out what do I not like and actually define it as a problem and see why I decided on the system in the first place and if there's a way to fix it without making it take up a bunch of time and brain energy. And so here's what I decided on doing. I decided to use Notion. I like the quick add from Todoist, and so I was like, all right, I'll just use a Raycast plugin to quick add to Notion. I get rid of a lot of the rigidity of my Notion setup, and then there's still problems with this system. Like for one, Notion and Notion Calendar is not the most kind of refined product. They have products, like they have a lot of features and they're web based. So there's problems with like syncing and kind of their speed and niceness of use. But at the end of the day, they solve the problems, right? And so that goes back to what I was saying earlier. You're never going to get a perfect solution. This is probably 85-90% good. The only real problem is some of this bloat like AI and whatever, and some of the stuff doesn't load the fastest. But fuck it, dude. It's like it gets the job done, and I barely spend any time thinking about it now. I haven't changed anything in this setup in so long. And so, yeah, I'm just going to explain to you how I use this system and what I do with it. So, first thing is I have 4 pages, or 4 databases. These are the primary databases. So, I have... Get a haircut. This has been on here for so long, dude. I still have not gotten one. Look at that. That's crazy. But yeah, so basically I have reminders, which is for like recurring tasks. You can set up templates and then just have them be recurring. And these are like quick day-to-day things where they're not a project. They're just like 5-minute things that I need to remember to do. Okay? And I check them off. And then the other thing is I use Notion Calendar. And what you can do is I used Notion Calendar before and I didn't really understand how to set it up. And this time I realized you can create multiple different calendar views for each database, and then those will create multiple lists in Notion Calendar, and you can color code them then. So then that way I have everything that's complete is marked in green, and then everything that's pending is actually marked in the regular color. Or like, so this is top priority, this is like middle priority, and then blue is like kind of I want to do it. It's like ideal. So I'm just gonna check off this. But that's the reminders table. Then we come over to the planner. You could call this projects, but since I do content sometimes in here, I call it planner. And so this is nice because this allows you to kind of like do the I think you call this like a Gantt chart thing. So I don't know. See, this is one of the things with Notion. This is still loading. It just takes a minute, and you know, oh well. And so what I do is I can plan out all my projects if I get into a kind of feeling where I want to plan things out. Like the great thing about this is I don't have to be super rigid with how I use it, because sometimes I time block. Like if we come back here, I was time blocking like a shit ton, and now I don't really time block all that much because I kind of have bigger, simpler tasks to focus on, and so I'm not planning them out as much. I just kind of do them, and that's okay. That's what you want in a system. It's not going to be super rigid where if you fall off you feel like you're failing. It's just you just write stuff down and then you move on with your life, right? So that's my planner. I have a few different, if we come back to the board view, I have a few different kind of stages. So there's like ideas, pending, things I'm working on next, and then active is like stuff that's active, I guess. And another great thing about this is right now I'm working on this project where I'm trying to improve this product of mine. And what I do is I add it to my favorites so it's quickly accessible. And then oftentimes, like if we go here, I got most of the way through this, but I did probably 80% of this, right? There's this 80-20 rule where you take like half of the work is like 80%, or you can get 80% done in 20% of the time, and then the remaining of that remaining 80%. Anyways, I think you get the idea. Basically, I just got most of it done, and then the rest of it's going to take as long as everything else did. And so I'm like, I'll do that later because I got the base feature implemented. So I just leave it. I just move it back to pending, and that's okay. And it's really nice to have a system where, like, if you look at Todoist, you have projects in here, and you kind of, I don't know, you just can't really do the same type of thing with this. It's just not as nice, and the note functionality isn't as nice. The thing with Notion is, like, again, like, whatever you care about is what you should prioritize, and whatever app you should use, but I like Notion because you can share documents super easily. You can do basically everything you need to do, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, coolness is just something I was playing with, but I'm not using it. But yeah, and then we have the Notebox, and so Notebox is basically a list of all your quick notes, okay? So whenever you want to take, like, whenever you just need to write something down, just if you're brainstorming or taking notes, you just open up a new document, and boom, there's a template with a nice icon. And yeah, you just basically fucking take notes. That's about all it is to it. And you can come back through these. And then the documents page is all of my like actual documents that I want to keep going, right? So I have like my reading list, I have my finance tracker, my website CMS, and these are things that I want to keep coming back to. And yeah, that's basically all it is, because that's kind of how I view the system. And it's nice with Notion because everything's in one place. You can turn it into a project manager if you want. You can turn it into a CMS if you want. And you don't have to keep like skipping around. Oftentimes I find that the problem with these systems is you find like a system that you like using, but then after a little bit you start to find like limitations, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna try something else that doesn't have this limitation. And so with Notion you rarely hit these limitations, and so you can basically do whatever you want with it, and that means you spend a lot less time switching around things. Yeah, I mean, that's basically all there is to it. I think the main message of this video is don't overthink it too much. This priority, I mean, I guess the priority I just use for visualize, but I don't even really use it. And then this stuff, super simple. Like, I used to have, what I said when I said Notion was too rigid earlier, is I had like an area thing. So I had another list here that was areas. And so each project would be tied to its own area. You could do that, but I find it a little bit too restrictive, and it kind of ends up with more complexity than you need. You really don't need that much complexity, right? So, yeah. Just keep it simple and just get stuff done. If you're one of those people that likes to like try different systems out and sometimes you feel bad about it, just know there is an end. I've hit that end, and it feels great to not worry about it anymore. Not see myself as the loser that used to fucking think about this shit all the time. And yeah, I really think it boils down to being intentional about your choices, making sure that it's actually a priority, that you find something different if it's actually hindering your workflow, and then just kind of sticking to it, you know? One last thing is it's super nice with like this Notion project database is you can add a bunch of tasks, and then you can set the task to be like today, and then when you go back to the calendar, if I hit refresh, then it'll show up right here. So like if I was using Todoist, this would probably be way faster. And what the fuck, now nothing's loading, dude. This is so cooked. But this is just one of those things where it's like, all right, it's not going to work perfectly all the time, and you just have to be okay with that. And I like far more things about it than I dislike. But yeah, I could just basically drag this out onto my calendar and just make it into a subtask and time block it. You don't have to do it, but you can, you know, and that's the point. Just gives you a lot of flexibility. So, anyways, hope you enjoyed this video.